What's up, Jen?
Not much, Paul. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. It is one of the last sunny days here in the Pacific Northwest. We have rain in the forecast soon, and I'm afraid we won't see sun again until next spring. But that's comes with the territory in the living in Washington State.
Oh my goodness. I'm in Myrtle Beach, and we're in the thick of hurricane season and haven't seen any hurricanes or any bad weather here. It's been sunny and no rain, so it's crazy.
Okay, I like it. Maybe I'll come visit.
You should.
Hey, Mike, what are you doing October 15th through 17th?
I'm going to be in Illinois with you at MTForecast.
We will be, and Nick will be there, and it is always a fantastic event. Nick, of course, will be there with us as well. Roger Atkins from NTMA, Travis Egan from AMT, of course, lots of great speakers. One of the ones I am most always keen to hear is from the ITR economics crew. Michael will be there, and their talks are always just absolutely fascinating. They talked at the MFG meeting.
Yeah, the one in San Antonio, and that was a ton of fun. And of course, I'm a numbers guy, so I love seeing the trends and the kind of where they see everything going. And I think it does give us really great insight into, just where the industry's heading and how maybe as people in the industry, we should be responding to that.
Yeah, because the reality is, economics and the economy is kind of frothy right now. There's a lot going on, and being keyed into the themes, the strategies, the trends that are happening in the next year plus are really important. And I think any business leader, especially in machining right now, because it's so dependent on all sorts of macro trends, really need to be there to hear firsthand what's going on in the business.
So how does someone register for it, Paul?
They go to amtonline.org and just click on the events tab at the top and choose MTForecast.
Well, it's going to be fun. We'll see you there.
See you there, buddy. So for those that do not know you, we'd love to make an introduction. You have been sort of the magic wizard behind the scenes here at MakingChips for years now. And you have some exciting news to share with the metalworking nation. And that's partly why we have you on today. And we're going to hear from Kyra Tillman about leadership as part of this Machine Shop MBA series. And you get to hear very firsthand, right from her, get to ask her the tough questions about this exciting news that you have coming up. So why don't you give a little bit of your background, and you and Dustin, and just share what's going on.
I'm very excited about that. So we kind of have two different stories here. So I have been writing for MakingChips since 2020 for the last 5 years, learning a little bit about everything as I go. And last year, I started as the manager and have been helping with anything and everything that I can and trying to keep everybody organized. My husband, Dustin, has been working in event planning for the last 11 years. He gets to travel all around the world, absolutely loves his job, loves the people that he gets to work with. But we have a 4-year-old son. And it's been getting harder and harder for Dustin to constantly leave him and be away sometimes for 2 or 3 weeks at a time. And, tough answering the question like, when is daddy going to be back? And that sort of thing. So he's been dabbling here and there in different ways that he could transition out of his job into something else. And we actually, happened to look at a website that was selling businesses. And we came across a local machine shop. And it started kind of almost as a joke. I was like, what if we sent this to Mike, Paul, and Nick and see what they think? Like, run it by them, see if it's worth looking into more. So we sent the information their way, and Mike was like, yeah, why not request more information about the shop? So we did. We reached out to the broker, got some more information, signed an NDA, and then dove into the long process of submitting an offer, getting the offer rejected, submitting another offer, and then finally moving into the due diligence process. So hopefully, in the next couple of weeks, we will be closing on our machine shop.
That is just such an amazing story to have come for both you and Dustin, having no experience in the industry, get inspired by everything that you're a part of behind the scenes on MakingChips, and now being ready to be on the cusp of jumping in with both feet yourself.
Definitely. Yeah, the Machine Shop MBA series that we've been working on for months now, I mean, it's the perfect blueprint. Like, we break down everything you could possibly think of, and hopefully we'll continue to do that. that you would need to either start a shop from scratch or purchase one and continue to grow and build it into something successful. And yeah, so the whole series has made this feel completely doable for us.
Well, I applaud you. You are both very brave. And I can also, having seen lots of pictures of Cooper, your son, I could see why Dustin would have a hard time leaving him to go on his trips, because he's absolutely charming and adorable.
He is a sweet little dude.
And tell us about the new name of this shop.
So we are going to call it Cooper and Company Manufacturing.
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
So cool. So, Kyra, this is a good segue. Thank you for joining us here on Making Chips. Obviously, you and I have gotten to know each other a bit over the last couple of years, and you were a very wise guest on the Machine Shop Mastery podcast, which is largely why we invited you here. And yeah, would just love to have you talk about leadership in a machine shop, right? That's something that you've now done for several years, and you had quite the transition between, the last two previous generations of your family business and what you had to share on our show together. It was just a perfect segue into why we need to talk about it on the MBA series, because a shop cannot be successful without great leaders. So yeah, welcome and thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I have really gotten a lot out of the series that you guys have been doing, the Machine Shop MBA. I've really learned a lot and taken a lot of good information away from the episode. So I'm honored to be on one and hope I can contribute as much as others have contributed to me.
That is a foregone conclusion that will be the case. So for those that maybe, and we encourage folks to go listen to that episode of Machine Shop Mastery, but if they haven't or don't, let's just give a little bit of a background on you, Kyra, and BTM Industries.
Sure. Well, BTM Industries was started by my grandfather in 1963. He was a machinist by trade and just wanted to work for himself, so he started this company. My dad and my uncle, two of my uncles actually joined him in the business later on, and in 76, they took over from him. But we all worked here. It was very, very much a family business. Uncles, grandpa, grandma, dad, brother, cousins, everybody was here at some point or another. I was slave labor as a child. I grew up literally one block away from this building, so I was here all the time.
Okay.
Went to college, swore I would never come back. Was just never really paid attention to what we did, just knew I had to be there and I didn't like it. And it smelled funny and it wasn't for me is what I had decided. I went to school for construction management, built industrial and commercial buildings for 13 years. And much like Jen was saying, I had a young family and I was gone a lot. So I was looking for my next step. My dad was here at BTM still now on his own. His brother had to retire for health reasons unexpectedly. He was also looking for what's that next step? What does that look like? They'd never planned for any kind of exit. So I decided to come back here and see if I could help him out, see if it was a fit for me. And that was 12 years ago. So I think I decided it was a fit. About 7 years ago, I actually bought the company from my dad and he retired. So we're a small job shop. We do boring, turning, and milling, BTM. There's only 12 of us. We're not a big player, but we like to think we punch above our weight class.
Love that.
Fantastic. So I know that you had some different thoughts about the way a shop should be managed and led. And why don't you talk a little bit about what leadership means to you in the context of a machine shop, and
Sure.
What you changed when you became the leader of this business?
Yeah. So for me, leadership is more about support than anything. And to me, that means I've got to do it. I can't just say the words. I've got to actually back them up. Nobody's going to trust what I say if I don't put action behind it. So that's a big thing to me. I'm not a machinist. I don't pretend to be a machinist. I think that would completely take away from all the years that they've put in and the expertise that they have. If I pretended to be something, I wouldn't. We have got a great team here, and I lean on them for their expert advice in those technical areas, which is very different. That sets me apart from my grandfather and my dad. They both were machinists, so they knew how to go out and make the parts. So for them, it was, they came at things just a little differently. And I think just generationally, we're kind of different. My grandfather was in the Army, so we had the military background. So did my uncle. My dad is an engineer. They're very just kind of rigid in their thinking. Things are very black and white, and things were not really about people. It was about, getting the work done and making it the way that they said to make it, which was the right way. So I just have a different perspective, I think, on things. A lot of it is because I'm not from the shop floor. I'm not trying to tell anybody that I know how to make things better than they do, because I don't. So there's a lot changed when I came back, and it's not that things were wrong or bad. It's just I had a different vision for things. When I came back in 2013, this company was still running jobs on index cards, and there weren't even travelers. I can't even say there were travelers. There were no work instructions. It was simply a paper blueprint with a job number and a due date and a quantity written on it that went out to the shop floor. And, there was really no way of tracking it. Everything was written down in ledgers, and the information was put into a Lotus database. Most people don't know what Lotus is. So, that's what it was in 2013, which was exactly the same as it was in the late 80s, early 90s when I left. So things hadn't changed, and it worked for them, and that was fine. For me, it didn't work. I felt like there had to be better ways to do things. So I slowly started making changes away from index cards and, scribbled notes on drawings. When I came back, there was no inspection. There simply was not an inspection process. So there was a lot that I kind of had to unpack and change.
I imagine the folks making parts were very skilled, so the parts were good largely, but not a systematized way to ensure that was the case and report that it was the case.
Right. And there's a lot of repeat work. So there was a lot of making the same parts over and over again. So the same person would make the same parts, which, isn't scalable either.
A lot of that resonates with me, just because, like my husband and I are definitely coming in from outside the industry, and we want to be super careful that we don't step on any toes or come in pretending that we know anything. But I also want to be able to come in and also project confidence. We know that we have the right people mentoring us and helping us. So how did you handle that particular part of the transition, coming in as someone outside the industry, as a woman? How did the shop receive that?
It was a mixed response. There were people here that kind of thought they should be the next in line because there were no other family members remaining in the company at that point, and they had been here a long time, and maybe felt like they should be running the ship. So there was some of that happening, but a lot of my time spent in construction was no different. I didn't know how to run the electric. I didn't know how to do the plumbing. I knew how to bring all the right people together to make an end product. And I knew how to talk to the trades, and I knew how to talk to the customers and kind of bridge that gap. And this was no different. I think a lot of it is showing respect for people and for the knowledge and the expertise that they have. And I am not somebody who's ever been afraid to say, I don't know the answer to that, but I'll find out. And I find that people respect that when you don't try to make it up and you're not trying to be something you're not, but I follow through too. And that's just something that comes with time and with consistency, with people seeing over and over that, she's not going to pretend like she knows, but she will find the answer and she will get back to you. That's just sort of one of those things that I learned young in construction that, that was key, that these, I'm working with people who know what they're doing and have honed their craft. Be respectful of that and don't pretend like you know things you don't know.
That's great advice. I love that.
Mm-hmm. That's a good one. So maybe elaborate a little bit. In our episode together, you talked about your dad being, you said, a little bit more rigid and just not maybe the warm touch that you might bring to, to communication and management, and then leadership. And management and leadership are clearly different things. Maybe you just speak to a little bit more of that.
Yeah. So one of the things that I started doing when I came back was having monthly meetings with everybody, and just kind of in that way opening the lines of communication and letting, we get together once a month with everybody to just, talk about what's been going on. We look at our rework hours. We talk about any issues that are happening. We talk about maybe customers that have come in, new customers, new opportunities, that kind of thing. And that really made a big difference in just people feeling like they have more of a handle on what's going on, and they know that there's that open line of communication where they can come and, if they don't want to do it in that forum and, raise their hand and say, hey, we should look at this or we should try this. They know that is something I'm open to. But, previously there was nobody ever knew what was going on. There weren't coordinated efforts into communicating anything. So that was something that I started early on. And again, something that I have experienced in my career that I appreciated, when people kept us in the loop and we knew what was happening. We knew what was coming down the pike, and we weren't just kind of flying in the dark.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like setting sort of a longer term vision for what you want from the shop was an important element? Like getting people to rally behind, where you wanted to take the company?
Yeah, I think, getting the right team in place has been, is always a challenge, right? So we not only have to find skill, but you've got to find the right attitude and the right disposition to work here. And we have that now, where we kind of have this collective desire to see the manufacturing community as a whole grow in the United States, because, we need it. We need it as a country, and we need it as a company. And we kind of have everybody that's sort of rallied around that sentiment, which is huge. It took a long time to get there. We don't always get it right. Sometimes we get people on board that we think are the right fit, and then they end up not being the right fit. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's kind of having that long-term vision for the company and for the manufacturing community really helps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You mentioned bringing some people on that, were not and ultimately the right fit. Can you just share a little bit about the importance of making sure you have all the right people on the right seat in the bus, and when you don't, how that affects the team overall, and just maybe some lessons you've learned or some anecdotes?
Yeah, we've seen a lot that, again, we're not a big shop. So one bad apple really makes a bad effect quickly. One attitude that's, kind of wants to do that's not my job, or, that kind of attitude really spoils things, and it just runs through the shop really quickly. So I have to learn to make those decisions quickly. They're hard decisions to make, but, it's that whole hire slow, fire fast kind of concept that, I've got to make the decision as the leader to kind of cut it out when there's an attitude that doesn't fit, because it does. It affects productivity. It affects morale. It can bring everything down. But on the flip side of that, when we do have somebody on the team that really gets it and really just has a desire to work hard and, to support their fellow teammates and the community, we've seen the dividends that are paid are huge by fostering that in somebody and moving them up the ranks in the company. We try to do that as much as we can. We have somebody who started with us 7 years ago in shipping. He, moved into inspection, got really good at that, started getting interested in machining. So he moved on to a machine, just really has a good grasp of all the different things that we do. It has a great attitude, is a really strong team player. So we recently created a new position for him as a production planner, because he's so detailed and he understands what we're doing. And when we brought ProShop on, he took to that really well. And now with a new tool, we decided, well, we have an area that we could fill as a planner. It's not something we ever had before, but he's made it's made a big difference. And for people to see that, to see somebody who came in, to pack up parts and unload trucks and, to now be the one who's doling out work and, taking care of our schedule is huge. And we're happy to see him be able to succeed and just thrive in that role.
I love that story so much. Yeah. Some of the very best people in shops that I've gotten to tour and meet started as shipping, receiving, or sweeping floors, or just running the saw or whatever. And sometimes you hear them, ending up being a COO or president or, some pretty significant role in the company.
Yeah.
And if leaders don't enable that and facilitate that, those people will never rise to the level that they maybe is the best use of their talent for the entire business.
Yeah, we agree. And again, it was the right attitude, the right disposition. And now we got him in the right seat.
Hey, Metalworking Nation, Paul here. The countdown is on for Top Shops 2025, and I want you to be there. It's happening on November 11th and 12th in Charlotte, North Carolina at the NASCAR Hall of Fame. The best of the best in the machining industry will be all in one place, sharing strategies, best practices, and leveling up together. And optionally, come in the afternoon of the 10th to visit Roush Yates Manufacturing Solutions and see one of the most incredible machine shops in the world. If you've seen my videos of their shop, you know how amazing it is. That tour alone is worth the price of admission. Nick, Mike, and I will all be there, and we want you in the room with us. Registration is officially open, and the team at Top Shops has graciously offered listeners of Making Chips 20% off the registration price. That's $200 or more off with code MAK20. So go to topshopsevent.com, grab your spot now, and I hope to see you there.
One of the questions I had, and again, someone from outside the industry, how do you begin to build trust with the existing team and build that environment where they trust you and they're excited to move forward with new ideas and that sort of thing?
I think a lot of that is earned, and a lot of it takes time, and it takes a lot of consistency and diligence on your part. For example, I differ in my dad a little bit in that I am not looking for, I'm looking more for solutions than trying to find fault when something happens. Things happen. Stuff goes wrong all the time. For instance, yesterday, my team brought in a part and they said, we're pretty sure we know what your answer is going to be, but we've got this part and, the dimension is kind of on the edge of being okay. But when you look at it, there's some chatter in there. We can't really clean up the chatter. There was a lot to it. And, my answer was, no, we have to make it again. It's not right. And so they know I'm not going to cut corners. So they know that they shouldn't cut corners either. But it's just been time and me over and over for them hearing, not only just saying, hey, we have to send out good parts and the parts that, are to spec and look nice, but also seeing me say, no, we have to make it again. And they know that means we're going out of pocket. This one's on us. We are going to pay to make this customer's part, but we're going to make it right. And it took time for them to see that over and over, the consistency there that, no, I mean it. I'm not just saying it. Now that they know me, they know if I say it, I mean it, I'm going to do it. But that didn't happen overnight. I had to build that trust with them over time and just really being deliberate with my actions and my words and making sure that they're in sync. I mean, I make mistakes, and I'll be the first to admit it when I do that that was on me. I screwed it up. I'll get a new piece of material or whatever the case may be. But again, I always make sure that it's understood that I'm just trying to find a solution. I'm not that's not a witch hunt. Things happen. That's not to say if we see the same thing happening over and over and over again, that's a different conversation. A private conversation, though, too, I've found that's another thing that really helps is, you praise in public and you take corrective action behind closed doors. I'm not going to have a conversation with somebody about something they need to work on in front of everybody else. That's a conversation that we'll have just with them and only with them. I'm not going to talk to other employees about it. It's just a conversation with them. And again, that is another area I think that has helped build trust, that I'm not trying to publicly humiliate anybody.
Right.
And that just doesn't happen.
I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was going to say, inherent in your answer about redoing the part, you didn't yell at them, you didn't blow up, you didn't throw anyone under the bus. You're just very, very candid about we have to have this high bar of quality. Let's just redo it, right? It's just how it is.
And the fact that they came in and said, "We know what your answer is going to be. We just kind of want to tell you about it," tells me that they weren't afraid to come in here and say it. They just were like, "This is this is what happened, and we think we know what you're going to say." But that to me was a big deal, that they know, that it wasn't going to fly. We're going to have to do it over.
And they didn't even try to hide it or just kind of wrap it up in in a box and ship it out, hope that it doesn't come back. Yeah.
No. And that's something we talk about on a regular basis here. Because like I said, once a month, we look at our rework and or remake hours. And my point always is, there is we spent some time this month, but you know what? We found it here. It didn't make it to the customer. We don't have RMAs. We don't have customers saying they got bad parts. We're catching it here, and that's what's important. We don't want to send them out.
So I wanted to ask about operational discipline and continuous improvement, right? We can tell from the posts that you share, you guys are very much about always getting better and always improving. You have that sort of continuous improvement mindset. And a lot of that comes along with, operational discipline and having systematized processes that can operate in the business. I imagine a lot of those you had to build yourself. That may not have been the mindset when you came in. And maybe you've already covered in some of the answers you've given how that's happened, but maybe if you could speak more specifically to that discipline of how you operate as a business.
Yeah. So a lot of that kind of comes from me. I'm just a very curious person. I always have been. I'm always looking for, well, why are we doing this? What can we do here? And I think as an organization that has really taken flight and really kind of taken on a life of its own since we've started using ProShop, to have this system now where we can capture that information and track things. I mean, we even use one of the modules for continuous improvement tasks and suggestions. And it's just, the more we improve things, the more people see other things that could be improved. It's kind of contagious. We have found the more we've, said, well, let's go paperless. Let's go, let's get rid of the travelers on the shop floor. We just have seen that people keep coming up with other things. Well, could we do this? Can we try this? And it's just kind of taken on a life of its own, where we're always looking for how we can do something better. And sometimes we go through an exercise and we find that the way we've been doing it is a great way. And, we're really not going to improve on it, and we'll move on. But I think because I am such a inquisitive person by nature, I'm always asking questions. People have seen that I don't care if you ask questions. You ask me a crazy question. Sometimes the most crazy suggestions will, land in a great solution. You just never know. So I think it's just, it really, it's across the company. There is not a section of the company where someone is not coming in saying, "Hey, what if we try this? Or do you think we could, try to make this better or do this different?" It's a mindset for sure.
Sounds like a really collaborative environment too. Like everybody's excited to bring up new ideas, and I love that. I hope that's the kind of shop that Dustin and I are able to have. What is it? And we covered it a little bit, but what does it look like? I mean, I don't know if your shop has a particular process of how you take somebody and develop them into leadership positions.
So we have an apprenticeship program here that's, registered through the Department of Labor. So we do have that program that we use for crafting new machinists. Actually, my son is getting ready to start that apprenticeship program now, which is pretty cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah. But we also have, we just recently sent 2 of our team members to a leadership training series with our local community college here. They've got a great, I think it's
Amazing.
a 8-week program where they go once a week. And it's just all different leadership topics and, kind of learning communication and that kind of thing, building trust. We really, we look for training opportunities. We're very fortunate to have a great community college locally, and, organizations like TMA and IMAC locally do a lot of training. So we're always looking for those opportunities and offering it to the people that we think, could use or, could benefit from it.
That's really cool.
Cool to actually send people to leadership training. It's kind of amazing that you did that just before we recorded this episode. Just speaks to you're the right person for this episode. So that's fantastic.
And again, we're not big. We're a company of 12 people. So, companies of all sizes, I think, can do things like this. And, for that, those particular classes that we took, we had a grant that offset the costs of that. So you can do it big or small. You don't have to be Microsoft to be able to invest in training and leadership training for your team.
That's awesome. I know the shop that we're coming into is small too. There's 11 employees, some full-time and some part-time. So it's definitely inspiring for me to hear that you found a way to be able to invest in your people and help them grow as leaders. And, the apprenticeship program, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll get into the grants and other external things that you talked about so eloquently on our show. But I know there's a lot of shop owners that have this mentality that it's a scarcity mentality, and everyone needs to always be doing something. So even just the idea that you would take someone and send them out to training classes, some people may be like, oh, I can't afford them to not be doing something, creating revenue right now. Maybe just talk through that a little bit, just kind of stepping back, looking at the bigger picture and being more strategic in some of these decisions you're making.
Yeah. I hear that a lot. I definitely play the long game. So for me, this is a big deal. I want the company to be sustainable. My kids are both here. I want to be able to transfer the company onto them as we go. So the long game is a big deal to me. And I know it does, cost money to have somebody at a class, and it was during the day. So they were, off of the shop floor during the day and not making parts. It's no different than we close down for the week of 4th of July and we close down for the week of Christmas. It's a paid holiday week. It's expensive, and I know that there's, you got a week where you have money going out and nothing coming in. But to me, investing in our people, in their well-being and in their skills is how we make sure we're here for the long term. And that it is a big deal to me. And it's the reason that we host high school interns in the summer. Yeah, I know they can't jump in and really contribute much, but it's how we help introduce manufacturing to the next generation. And, we're not going to be able to sustain this manufacturing community if we as leaders don't get out there and tell the stories and open our doors and let people know there's so much you can do in manufacturing. It's not all just on the shop floor either. But, to me, it's an investment that we have to make in our team, for the future.
I'd love to hear more about your apprenticeship program. It's something that Dustin and I are really interested in implementing at some point. And, Myrtle Beach isn't exactly a mecca for manufacturing. There's not a lot of shops here, but we would love to grow our shop and bring in younger people, fresh ideas, fresh talent. So I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, well, we have a really great resource that we work with, Rad Training, that originally wrote our apprenticeship program for us. I think I did it. My dad had one in the 80s, but I had redone it, I think in maybe 2016 or 2017. And then we just did a refresh of it this year with her help. There's a lot to know about apprenticeships and kind of navigating the sea of the Department of Labor. They're great at kind of talking to us and seeing what we need and then and crafting a plan around that. And again, I'm like the grant queen, but They work on grants from the federal government right now. So all of the work that RAD does, helping people either refresh their programs or make a new program from scratch, is funded through a grant.
That's incredible.
Maybe that's a great segue to talk about external resources, mentorship, peer groups, grants, the MEP, just all the things that you tap into that really help your company grow. I think those are great examples of being an effective leader.
Yeah, to me, I think one of the best things I can do for my team is work on me. I don't know everything, so I try to find, people that do and surround myself with, experts and peers that'll hold the mirror up to me and say, Kyra, you need to look in the mirror on this one. You're part of the problem. And, make me think and challenge me a little bit. I went through the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program in 2019. And from that, I went on to Vistage and participated in Vistage until last year. Just changes here. I was not able to participate as much as I wanted to, so I stopped going to that. But through those types of groups, that's how I made it through COVID. I would have never made it through COVID had I not had this incredible support system around me that were not only sharing resources, but just kind of, getting on Zoom calls and talking each other through what was going on. It was such uncharted territory for all of us. And if I didn't have those resources, I wouldn't have made it. I wouldn't have been able to maintain my sanity and figure out how to keep this team going. So that's very important to me. I have a group of 3 other female manufacturing owners. We get together once a month on a Zoom call. We're all over the place, but we get together for an hour and a half and just see, does anybody need help? What's going on? What can I help you with? So that's huge to us. And also, groups like IMEC, which is our Illinois MEP partner, the Manufacturing Excellence Partnership. They're a great resource for me, and they, help me tap into a lot of grant opportunities that we've been blessed with a lot of grants for training and for capital equipment and all kinds of things that I wouldn't have known about if I wasn't connected to my local networks. IMEC and TMA. Locally here, we have a group called MCEDC, the McHenry County Economic Development Corporation. So I'm involved in a lot of things, and they're not all manufacturing based. Like a lot of my peers that I rely on for help, they're not in manufacturing. They're other business owners, but they can add perspective when sometimes I need somebody to say, Kyra, get out of your own way. You're doing this. You're causing a problem. So that has been immensely helpful and just been a huge benefit to the company.
Well,
inherent in some of what you're saying is humility as well.
Oh.
I think that's a hallmark for a great leader. Yeah. You don't know everything. Sometimes you're the problem. Like, only people that are humble say that.
Well, and it's, sometimes I have to take a good hard look and say that, yeah, it's me.
So when we complete our shop purchase, one of the first things that we want to implement is switching from their current ERP system, which granted is a little antiquated, and we want to switch to ProShop. I know that's something that you guys did. How was the change management through that process?
So there's a good example of how I was part of the problem. So we started using an ERP system in 2014. So we had been using that. And then in 2022, we decided to make the change to ProShop. So we bought ProShop. We went through our training. We had, very extensive training, group training with ProShop. Our training ended up concluding at the end of June. Well, as I said before, we closed down for the week of 4th of July. So we literally had our training end, I think, June 30th. And then the first week of July, we were closed. Everybody had a great time for 4th of July. We came back. We just got busy doing our work the same way we had always done it. And all of the things that we had learned about ProShop flew right out the window. And I was as guilty of it as anyone else. I wasn't in the system, using the system. And we had almost a full year go by before I finally had a close friend of mine say, put your foot down and start using the system, Kyra. Stop complaining about it not being used and you start using it. And I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, lead by example. And I just finally said, okay, starting next week, no more orders go in the old system. Everything goes into ProShop. That's the only way we're going to learn how to use it for us is we have to just start using it. And hey, lo and behold, once I did that, it happened. Everybody started using it. And honestly, within a week, the guys were coming to us saying with paper travelers, because everything that was on paper, we were going to finish on paper, right? And we were going to just put all the new stuff in ProShop. Now, after the first week, within the first week, they were coming to me with paper going, can you just put this in that new system? Because it's so much easier. The fact that they could just zoom in on a print on their screen instead of coming in and saying, can you blow up this part of the drawing? I can't read it. Once we started using it, it went very fast, way faster than I thought it would, the transition. Getting there was painful. And again, a lot of it was, I wasn't doing it either. I wasn't getting into ProShop and just starting to use it. I was just expecting everybody else to do it. So, well, once we made the decision that no more, don't use it anymore, there's been no looking back. And I mean, if you asked anybody here, there's no way they could ever imagine going back to paper travelers and paper anything.
That's incredible.
I think any kind of big change is hard for organizations, whether it's going for ISO or ERP or Lean or who knows what. And I'm guessing, though, that the environment you had already fostered over the years prior of saying there's no such thing as a bad question and you can be open and you can come talk to me, and that was important for having your team feel like they were supported and they wanted to be a part of this change and weren't digging their heels in. Because sometimes you hear of a culture in a company where people don't just jump right in and they do kind of, try to dig in or protect their area of the business and feel like they're threatened with a change of any kind.
Yeah. And I think, again, with me jumping in and using the system right alongside of everybody else, it, showed a lot. I've had some conversations pretty recently with other companies that have purchased, the system and leadership isn't using it and, doesn't have a desire to use it. And that's puzzling to me, but and it's tough. It's tough to push change up from the bottom, right? It's a lot easier to have it start from the top and trickle down. So yeah, for me, leading by example and using the system myself, and I'm the ProShop champion. So I was out on the floor answering questions and, saying, I don't know, we'll figure it out together. Again, we're a small organization, so we wear lots of hats. We don't play that's not my job game, but I think that, it definitely had a hand in it, that we kind of had that communication already, that people knew to ask questions and, they knew I was learning right alongside of them.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be me too. Get my hands dirty and just diving in and learning as much as I can on the fly. And yeah, excited.
Well, back to the leadership lesson there, I think it's just really critical that employees see the leaders and the owners of the business as a peer almost, just right there in the thick of it with them, not in their corner office, just delegating tasks, but really just there together side by side, working through it, learning. And yeah, I think that's just an important lesson that hopefully people are taking away from this.
Yeah. And again, I go to training classes for things too. And I talk about that, just like we talk about, our team members that are going to leadership training or to fusion training or whatever. I let everybody know too what I'm doing. I went to take a class for this or that. And, it's important to me not just to dictate to you guys that we should, always be looking to ways to improve ourselves, but I do the same thing. And again, we're small, so it's not foreign to see me out there with a broom in my hand because there's a mess on the floor that needs to get cleaned up. You just kind of do what you have to do. And again, it goes back to the whole, it's got to be more than just words. You've got to back it up with your actions.
So I'd love to move to sort of maybe the final sort of segment of this and talk about some sort of key takeaways and best things that you've done as a leader or that have sort of furthered your leadership skills, but maybe just speak directly to Jen about it. And everyone else will pick up the lessons as well, of course.
I think for me, the best thing that I've done is work on me consistently. And making sure that I'm in the right frame of mind when I get here in the morning so that I can make decisions quickly and effectively. I started years ago. I start my mornings out quiet. That's what works for me. I meditate and I pray in the morning, and then I try to read. I read a lot. I'm always trying to find ways to become better at everything. So for me, that has been the key. As getting my stress under control and not freaking out so much about things, and just being able to show up here as a better human being, I think has made me a better leader. And I mean what I say, and I do, what I say I'm going to do. Again, that consistency is key. It's no different than it is with kids, right? With our kids, we've got to be consistent. But, if you're wanting to convey a message to your team, you've got to consistently show up and deliver that message.
Yeah, I love that. And it's obvious to us that you have a lot of integrity, and you're a leader that serves with so much humility. And I'm just very thankful that I got to join in on this conversation and learn from you. And hopefully I can connect with you at some point and continue the conversation, because I'm sure I'll have a lot more questions for you as we go through this process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I am in awe of you guys, rescuing a shop. I think that's fantastic. We need more of that. We need more people to help make sure that these shops don't go away. People don't lose their jobs and the work doesn't go out of the community. That's awesome. So any way that I can help, I am happy to do. One of my most favorite things in life is to make connections with people. And I got a lot of resources I can introduce you to. And I'm always happy to help you and anybody else.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I think one of the other lessons we're seeing firsthand here, Kyra, is just your incredible willingness to just give. And I think, the old adage that, when you give freely, you actually receive more back than you gave. But leading with your heart, leading with just how can I be helpful to others? How can I connect people to resources? How can I contribute and participate in the community? Again, just helps you grow and comes back in numerous ways. So another great lesson right here.
Manufacturers, what is your biggest headache? Is it measuring improving profitability, gaining efficiencies with AI and automation, maybe tightening up your cybersecurity, maybe getting your business ready to sell? At CLA, their goal is to know you and help you with challenges like these and more. Every day, CLA helps manufacturers tap into millions in revenue and cost savings, like one manufacturer that boosted capacity and revenues by 15 to 20%. Visit CLAconnect.com to hear real success stories and learn how you can grow your top and bottom line.
So Kyra dropped some amazing principles in this episode that you need to implement immediately. Because if you're not implementing these ideas and strategies, your shop is not going to be making chips.
And if you're not making chips,
you're not making money.
Bam.